election, but much closer to home and going on right now. There is an interesting situation in Coral Gables. The aggressive, you might call it, license plate reading system has been called into question, and we're now joined by the attorney, Caleb Kruckenberg, for Raul Mascanosa, the gentleman who is now taking legal action against the city over these data collection practices. And Caleb, appreciate you joining us today. I'm interested in this for a couple of reasons. One, I am sympathetic to the privacy cause, so I am a sympathetic ear interested to be convinced, but at the same time, I'm not sure that I am based upon what I know of the situation at this point. So if you'll lay out why you think the data collection by Coral Gables is over the top and ultimately what you would like to see happen here.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I work for a group called the New Civil Liberties Alliance, and we represent clients pro bono for when their constitutional rights have been violated by the government. And in this particular case, we're suing the Florida Department of State, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the city of Coral Gables because they're unreasonably monitoring their citizens' movements for a period of 3 years without any kind of probable cause. Now, the cameras in Coral Gables are located strategically throughout the city at major intersections, and they take a picture of your car and your license plate every time you go past. The problem is that this reveals a lot of information about you, and the cameras capture your every movement throughout the city. Our client has over 80 pages of images that he's received from the city in a public records request where the city is recording him driving everywhere he's been in the city 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the last 3 years. And what we want is the city to cease using the system until we can figure out a way to respect constitutional rights, and specifically the constitutional right to privacy guaranteed by the Fourth Amendment. And really, this is just an issue of we want the city and we also want the state agencies to respect constitutional limits. We want them to follow the law just like anybody else. And so that's why we think the city should have a probable cause requirement and a warrant requirement before they give this information to people, give this information to law enforcement so that they can use it in an investigation.
All right, so there's a lot there that makes sense. Let me throw this one at you. When you're talking about, in the case of driving, owning a car, obtaining a license plate, all this is something that we choose to do, that we willfully enter into, and we provide that information, and then we're in public. And so if you're in public with your tag information that you've agreed to the terms of previously, why is it that ultimately it's over the top for that information to be shared with a municipal government?
Well, we agree to have our license plate viewable to the public, but we don't agree, and I don't think most people expect their license plate information to be recorded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a period of years. Because the system we're talking about, the city of Coral Gables has said that it's collecting, on track to collect 80 million license plate images in 2018 alone. But they also store them for 3 years, and so they can go back and say, at any point in time, this particular license plate has been at this location, and then it went to another location, and what happens is that reveals a picture of your life that you don't expect the city to collect. It shows where you go to school, where you go to church, where you go to work, who you interact with, how fast you drive, and it's really the complete collection of data that's so invasive. And it's something that I don't think people understand because this is a new technology.
All right, so what's the next step here? Where do you expect this lawsuit to go?
Well, we filed this lawsuit because we think we're correct, and we think that the city's use of the license plate readers is unconstitutional, and we also think that the statewide policies with these systems is unlawful. And hopefully, this lawsuit is what it will take to put an end to the system so that we can require some sort of reasonable restriction on the use of this information. We don't necessarily believe that it's illegitimate for the government to collect this information, but what we object to is the automatic sharing of it, the automatic analysis, even when they don't specifically suspect that you've done anything wrong.
Well, it's going to be an interesting case to follow. I know a lot of folks are going to be watching, and obviously the implications of what happens here could have implications not just throughout South Florida, but pretty much everywhere, because I'm sure other municipalities might be watching this as well. So appreciate the insight, the information, and case we will be sure to follow. Caleb Kruckenberg, again, with the New Civil Liberties Alliance, and the attorney in this case for Raul Mas-Canosa, who is the gentleman who is suing Coral Gables over that license plate reader system. Now, when we take a look at some of these things in context, in this particular case, it's being done on civil liberties lines. It's interesting because, I've long thought that, sometimes I think data collection can be over the top. For example, a lot of people will be reticent to see cameras all over a city. But then again, if we're in public, is there a right for them to have some degree of privacy? Well, I would suggest probably not. But this kind of takes it the next step, and that philosophically is where this conversation is had. So your license plate information is right there in the light of day. The information that you have willfully given behind that is not. So now when that's provided to an entity, in this case municipal government, is that going too far? And it's an